button. Dude, a voice just told me recording in progress. That's wow. Okay, now look this. I'm hitting the timer because I'm so advanced. So now I know we've been going for 3 seconds so far.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, go.
A little bit slower, a little bit slower. All right, I'm in the cold with my outdoor research. All right. I don't know how you edit Zoom, but whatever, man. It's all on the fly. Hey, Doug Stanley, thank you for joining the Wake Up Laughing podcast today.
It's great to be here, Dave. And I'm a little sore because I did actually wake up laughing today.
Oh my God, you didn't overdo it, did you?
Well, it was pretty close. My girlfriend stopped me from losing it entirely.
Well, it's funny that you said that because one of the things I was going to ask you is what is your favorite day? What is the ultimate Doug day? As far as healthy and rolling, like in your groove, what is the ultimate Doug day? Speaking of girlfriends.
Well, you wake up with that girl to start
Okay.
the day. And then you reach into your creativity as far as you possibly can, and you pull something new out and you look at it from all sides and you make it come to life. You know, for me, that's pretty much it. You know, it's the expressions of creativity and the content that results in.
Nice. Creating art that you can share with others that touches other people, maybe, huh?
Yeah. You know, for me, it's about what makes you feel good, you know, and sometimes you have to be a little selfish when you are chasing that thing that makes you feel good, you know, and a lot of times that means I'm diving for hours and hours and days and weeks and sometimes even months into projects that make me feel good when they're done. You know, it's like beating your head against the wall. It feels so good when you stop.
That's great piece of wisdom there. I want to back up just a hair and just say to everybody, I'm going to try switching cameras. Not with the rubber gloves on. Okay. I just want to jump up front and center here and say, as an introduction to this fine, young man that you were just hearing from, this is my oldest living friend, actually oldest friend, period. We've known each other since we were 5 years old in Indian Guides, and we were in San Jose, California. And the short story is, we may have at different times saved each other's lives. Doug saved my life while climbing up a rock face that was like vertical, and he cheered me on when I was like 12. And also, I went to college. Doug was a river guide and a ski patrol, just steeped in the glory of the Sierra Nevada mountains, a mountain man. And I am fortunate. Part of who I am is a result of having a mountain man friend, and I could go and hang out with mountain men, river guides, ski patrols, ambulance, first responders. And then Doug maybe benefited, I hope, by coming to UCLA and seeing what my life was like. He went to my windsurfing class and watched Orson Welles in my film class. And so that's just a little, Doug and I go way back. And maybe I'll interview some strangers in the future, but so far I'm just interviewing people that I know pretty well. So I'd like to hear what you have to say, starting with childhood, which we shared some of. I'd like to hear about the role that nature and the wilderness and extreme sports like rock climbing has played in your mental and physical health.
Well, the truth is that's, really always been there. David, you and I were raised by fathers and parents that, really wanted us to see the outdoors world. And so we did. My dad, Mel, took me, my mom, Carol, took me all over all the national parks and all of the, great mountain ranges of the West. And we traveled in camping style usually. that was you and I, David, trying to get through and get by with whatever we could during those trips. And those meant a lot to all of us and everybody in the family as well as ourselves, and those things were great. We were, open to the Sawtooth Mountains in Idaho and exposed to, so many fabulous places together that those times were like the happiest times ever, and outdoors was part of it, it was all part of our lives. And it's part that, that I knew I needed to chase in my own life, because ultimately that's where I found my happiness is out on the edge somewhere.
The edge of a giant hole on a river, the edge of a mountain precipice in a blizzard with a 5-pound charge of dynamite in your hand, perhaps those kind of edges.
Yeah, edges like that, certainly I was fortunate, because ultimately it comes down to like being selfish, to do what you want to do, and at any cost. And so I was able to, go into river running, professional river running and guiding whitewater, while in the winters I was ski patrolling and becoming an avalanche forecaster and the person who ran avalanche control up in the Sierras. And that went on for many years, where literally my boots were outdoors all day, every day, the Grand Canyon in the summer, while I was guiding there, and for 5 months, and then I go back and, be outdoors as a ski patrolman. And, it was really easy to have communication with yourself during those times. I look back on, novels practically I wrote, and books and poetry and things of that nature. It was really a time where I was able to communicate with myself and really know who I was, because in that particular environment, I knew who I was, where other environments in the world, things that presented me with more fear, I guess, and anxiety, I avoided those things, trapped between the walls of the Colorado River and up on the ridges of the Sierras through the blizzards. And I enjoyed that time, really knowing who I was, when life was simple and I didn't have so many direct responsibilities.
So, you hear the term adrenaline junkie, right? And if you're climbing a sheer wall, or if you're going out in a blizzard at 4 a.m. with a backpack full of dynamite, and you can't see your hand in front of your face, but you remember that the cliff kind of cuts in sharp up ahead, so you make sure you don't fall off it into the avalanche danger zone. There's some adrenaline, huh? Is that part of what drives you to keep going back out? Do you get addicted to adrenaline rushes?
I think I might have answered that question differently when I was young, but today I look at it a little bit differently. It has to do, for me, with understanding who I am on the very edge of experience, and knowing that in those situations when it's raging and it's threatening quite literally to blow you right the heck off that ridge top, and you're standing on ice and rocks in your skis, like you're trying to, relate to the environment around you so you can understand where you are, because you don't want to be lost out there. And, during those times back then, I thought, it is a heck of an adrenaline rush to do things like that. But, nowadays I look at things a bit different. It's about who I was at that time and who I, maybe still today, is that person that needs to know how they will perform essentially at the very ragged edge of experience and in situations that are beyond them, bigger than they could have imagined. I kind of played a lot on those edges, as
Yeah.
And ski patrolling and avalanche control and wild rivers all over the world. But I've also spent my life working professionally in the media and television, and have been a specialist on the edge of the earth type experience. So that's led me through 37 countries to date, doing projects that are literally at the edge of the world. Deadliest Catch, for example, for Discovery Channel was, out in the vast Bering Sea, as it says in the beginning of the series. It's there's unpredictable experience, things that are going to happen out there. And in my 7 seasons of Deadliest Catch, I definitely found some of the edge of that experience. But I also had the ability to traipse through, Iraq, embedded with U.S. Army for many months, and live on a Montana cattle ranch, for 8 months. And those experiences go on and on through all different kinds of people.
Yeah.
And that really allowed me, if you really look at what I do ultimately, is I'm half psychologist, half television producer, because the types of interviews I do with people go on for months, and I'm seeing them and interviewing them while they're in their lows, while they're in their highest moments, while they've just caused trouble for themselves. I'm right in their face with the camera and asking the hard questions. And, it's given me a view into others who've lived their life like me, who require experiences at the edge of experience, just out there, and who need those places because that's kind of where they find themselves. I know who I am when the boat's upside down in the Colorado River on the highest water day we've seen in 10 years, and everybody's in the water, but I know who I am, and I'm that person that's going to put that all back together. And that's what, ultimately
Nice.
keep sane,
Yeah. Well, I saw you in the belly of Ike's Rapid on the Klamath. I saw you crab walking while you were sitting in the hole that everybody else had flipped on. And I saw you crab walking with the oars spinning around, ready to like disembowel you. And you were shooting around, keeping that raft from flipping. And then the river was like, yeah, I guess he passes the test. And the river just goes, spit, it spit the raft up on one tube and it fell back flat. And as legend has it, Doug Stanley landed in his seat with his hands on the oars. I saw that with my eyes. I think I had just gotten the poop scared out of me by getting recycled about 6 times in the same hole. Anyways, we both had quite a day that day. I would like to hear something about when you were a kid in like elementary school, and you're trying to fit in with the school system. And I'm guessing that all the while the mountains and the ski park and the skateboard park is calling you. How did nature come to your rescue when the American education system is trying to get you to become a good little robot? Question mark.
Well, the things that my father, really encouraged in my life, skiing and, being part of the mountains, that came to me because he was constantly involved in those things. And the fact that my mother lived in Santa Cruz and I had the beach and early surfing and things like that going on in my life, really, David, it was going to your house, and your viewers, your listeners may not understand this, but, David lived on the side of a mountain in Los Gatos, California, where he was, probably 2,000 feet above the valley, and incredible view, and everything around his home was adventure. Like we could literally launch ourselves off the lawn in front of his house and like fly 30 feet through the air and come crashing through bushes. And we had trails everywhere, and he had, little hideouts and forts built, and we had rope swings that would stretch out into, above the valley. It felt like they were so high. And
yeah,
that was a great region, and a lot of the experience that you're talking about, we shared when we were, swimming at Sunset Beach or playing in the dunes, or, everywhere we went, there was that outdoors was what we wanted. The door opened and we flew out it,
Yeah, right. And it's like the bush jumping thing. I remember we would put on like double pants and like triple jackets, and we would just hurl ourselves off the cliff knowing we would land in the bushes. And, you know, if my kids were doing that, I'd probably be like, gosh, what, are you sure you're not going to get impaled? But we were able, we had a lot of dirt under our toes, and it's very true. That we, you know, and then our trips, traveling together with motorhomes and trailers and bikes strapped everywhere, and we'd pull into a campground and the kids would jump out and get the bikes off, and man, we'd be exploring, like heading down the dirt road, seeing what we could find. And it's true, we were not in our rooms much. We were out chasing it down.
Well, let's face it, David, we invented mountain biking, right?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Lots of people invented mountain biking kind of all at the same time. But
yeah,
is we were out there riding, we had trails dipping down through the redwood trees in Big Basin. Remember that? You know, we were riding off down the hills, dodging big trees, and quite interesting times. But you know, up above your house was that place. Was it Four Trees? Is that right?
Yeah. I wish everybody had a dirt road that went a mile above their house to this plateau where you could go, and we would party up there in high school, right? Like some people would want to go to the bars, and I'd be like, no, Four Trees, let's go to Four Trees, have a bonfire, tell stories, you know, do stunts, see who can be stupider than who. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. And I want to touch on, you were talking about living in the Sierras and working at the ski park. I feel really fortunate that I was able to spend a winter with you and your ski buddies living in Norden in that A-frame kind of cabin. And it was the highest snow year in many years. It was 1983, I believe. But what I remember of that is that we were like a tribe, you know? I mean, we were all like 21, 22. You were a ski patrol. I was a lift op. I think Generic was a ski patrol also. And there was a guy living there that was another operator. But we would like hitchhike to work. We were, like you're saying, you and I slept in the basement, which was like a meat locker. There was no heater down there. And we had like military down jack sleeping bags. And yeah, your spit would crack before it hit the wall. But it was so tribal. Like we were so tight. And there was just this whole thing of like, you're living out of your day pack and you're scrappy, and you roll out that door in the morning and you seize the day, and maybe you help people, right? Like I'm a lift op. I'm trying to keep kids from getting pitched off the ski lift, and you're saving people's lives and bringing people down on stretchers. And yeah, that was good living. And I was losing my mind at UCLA, and I got to come join you in the mountains, and my health just soared. As soon as I showed up and was living up there, everything was good. And then I'd go back to UCLA and just, you know, in about 5 days, I'd be back in the dumps. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah. So to paint a better picture, because David, your recollection of those times and how great we felt, because, you know, essentially we faced challenges every day we had to overcome, you know. But that
not having money because we spent our paycheck in the first 5 days, and then you got 26 more days without money. Like, hey, you gonna eat all that cheese on your lip? Are you gonna eat that?
I survived on saltine crackers and ketchup packets because they were the only thing free in the cafeteria.
Oh, and then you were supposed to save people's lives running on saltines and ketchup.
But the nice, you know, anyway, that winter was 896 inches of snowfall happened. So it's like 74 feet around there fell. And some of the storms we endured were over 20 days straight. And power went out for 8 days. We burned our furniture. And then as the house itself got completely buried, an avalanche off our roof ended up busting through our main window and an avalanche landed on our kitchen table. But we just left it there because that's where we kept all our beers, right? We had the little beer stack in the snow that's on our kitchen table. But At that
Andy.
point, we had a tunnel going to our next door neighbor's wood pile. And so we would go down in the basement that you and I talked about, and we had that door that would open to the tunnel, and we would tunnel rat over and borrow, because we're going to replace it in the spring, borrow our neighbor's wood pile. And so we burned that until we had to end up burning some furniture. But that was a house full of 18-year-olds. And yeah, that was a winter to never forget. It has since happened that there's been more snow in a single year, but that was one of the highest snowfall years ever. And the
what I recall is it was 21 out of 23 days were snow days. So it basically like living in a cotton ball. And yeah, it was good, man. We were listening to ska music. Eric was a big ska dude. We were all dancing, and we would have these parties in the top floor, which you had to climb down snow stairs to get to the second floor. And we'd have these parties, and we'd throw open the sliding glass door, and the steam would just bellow out, and we were all just like covered in sweat. And yeah, man, just living hard and staying physically active each day, right?
By the way, that was the third floor. We had to get into the third floor because there was the wall. The dungeon we lived in was not underground. It was just under snow. The cinder block floor. The second floor was the main living floor. And then the third floor was the loft. And we had stairs coming down to go in the sliding glass door to get into the loft of the 3-story house.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. And for kicks, I remember that the out there in Norden, this is Norden, which is the highest snowfall in the continental US. And the snowbanks from the snowplows were like 15 feet high. So they were just slots. And for kicks, we would drive around it with my Firebird with chains on, with a rope out the back, hooky bobbing, like basically like water skiing on the back of a car with a rope. And there's nobody out there. Like there's nobody to run into. It's just you and your buddies. Yeah, that was fun.
And the snowblower. Oh
yeah, watch out for that guy.
For that one.
Hey, so tell me, with the work that you've done, I went through River Guide School with Bob DeVischer and you and Hayden and Roger Lee and with River Rat. And those 13 days going through River Guide School were like one of the high points of my life, right there with the private trip we did in the Grand Canyon. And it was so great to have that experience of being with all of these like super fit, super capable leader type people that did not crack under pressure, that maybe just got better and stronger under pressure. And then you and Roger went on to create California's own Whitewater Guide School. I'd like to hear something about all the seasons that you taught whitewater rafting. I'd like to hear something about how you have seen the river touch people's souls and hearts, and also just students, like watching students transform as they come in and they're kind of green and maybe they want to be a guide. And then by the time they leave your 13 days or whatever, they've been transformed. Like, I'd like to hear about that.
Well, I've had the opportunity to teach whitewater guide schools for, about 20 years. And we would do 1 or 2 schools a year, each 10 to 12, maybe 14 days long. And during that time, we had so many people that were, fairly young. We had a wide range of students, but, for the most part, 22 to 24 would be the average probably age. And we would, we'd take these people and we'd go run 10 rivers in about 12 days. And we'd just push them way beyond what they ever expected they would do. It was a trying time for each of them spiritually to be guided through it. But the truth is that almost to the person, every single person benefited so much from coming up against themselves and from facing challenges that originated in the outdoor environment. That world, being part of it, there's a connection. I feel it's base, and it's kind of, it's part of the mental health, that I've experienced in my best times, has really come through facing the real world like a real human being, doing the real things that we've done. And it kind of put right there with those other people that, cross the Bering Land Straits, or, things like that, it's that part of humanity.
Yeah, there's something about, we would always talk about the river god. And I remember specifically, well, during guide school, if you fell out of the boat into dangerous water, you'd get a chance to shake hands with the river god, and you'd be like terrified. And some loving person, thank God, would grab you and jerk you back into the raft, and you'd be like, whoa. And people would have these looks like they were looking right through you out the other side of the world. Like they just had a religious experience. I remember that on the Grand Canyon a lot. People would fall into that big water and get spun around a little bit, and it would transform you. And I guess maybe there's something about enduring hardship, and maybe you're cold, and maybe you got hurt, and maybe it's a long time till you're going to eat, and so you're hungry and you're cold, and maybe you're scared, but you make it home, and then it makes civilized life that much easier. It kind of raises the bar on what you can handle, I guess, maybe.
Right. It helps you to understand really what you're capable of. And what's really funny is, in the end, all of those moments that were the very most trying upon you become your favorite stories, become your favorite memories.
Yeah.
It's those moments that you reflect back upon in your life that really define who you are to yourself.
Yeah.
What have I actually done? What have I actually accomplished? And when climbing in Yosemite, for example, I did a number of big walls in Yosemite, and on this one particular trip, we did not plan to spend 2 days on the wall. We only planned to spend one. We were thinking we were superheroes and we could run up the Sentinel Valley, and we could just run right up it in a day. But we started off route. We were lost from the moment we got up there. And it took us a while back on route, but by that time we were committed to spending the night in the spring at about 7,000 feet of elevation on a little rock ledge, and with no sleeping bags, and me and my partner with our faces buried in each other's necks. And we proved that night for certain that you cannot heat up or warm up a rock that big with your butt,
but I guess not.
Going through the night, like trying to survive by holding my partner, and but I look back now and tears come to my eyes, because help define what I'm truly capable of, and that I can have a night like that. And all the big wall rock climbs I did, were all like that. There was nothing, I can never say I had a great time on that climb. For me, it was always about coming up against myself. And it was like, for months and months after a big climb like that, I just feel so good, about myself. And which brings me to one particular climb I did in the desert outside of Las Vegas at Red Rocks, that 13 miles there. And I brought my friend David Munson, who needed a little outdoor time. And there were several teams of climbers with us that were going to go do some of these big multi-day walls. So I was going off on a 2-day climb myself, but David came along and partnered up with, who'd you partner with?
Craig Huddleston was my buddy that I brought.
And
the guy from Prescott College that took us up on the wall.
Right. And so
Ben?
what happened is, the climbers that were there gave you a bunch of our old scraggly equipment we didn't want to take with us on the wall. And you built this rack of climbing equipment out of that, and you and Craig and
Yeah, it was me and Craig.
was it? Yeah. And you guys did a 2-day wall, right? What happened?
Well, so Craig and I went up on, and we started climbing up this crack without noticing that the left side of the crack was like a free slab of rock. And we found out that the friend tool, which expands in the crack, if you put enough weight on it, it's capable of pushing rocks apart. So this giant slab that we were climbing up on started moving. So we carefully backed out and realized we had blown it. But we didn't do any giant two-day climb. But what we did was we met this guy, Ben, who's like world class. And he was this like 20-year-old student at Prescott College. And he's like, hey guys, what's up? And we're like, well, we're just here. We don't know really how to climb, but we want to. And he's like, well, I'll take you up on a wall if you want. He's like, I'm in school right now, which is a great ad for Prescott College. So here's this scrappy surfer kid from Marin. And he's all, yeah, let's go. So he takes us up like a rope length up this sheer face. It was an easier climb. And we're standing on this little teeny ledge, with our triple anchor. And it was like, blew us away. Like, I don't know, we were 80 feet up or whatever, double rope length so we could rappel down. But yeah, that was pretty exhilarating. But we did that while you and your buddy, was it Max? You and your buddy. Yeah, you and your buddy were doing that outside bookend, like maximum exposure climb, as I recall.
Yeah, that was the east face of Mount Wilson, and that was kind of the last big wall of my career. But I remember we were supposed to summit in 2 days, and it took us 4 days, and we were there in the desert, and we were out of water for the last 2 days. And that was maybe the single greatest trial of my life, was that one, that being unable to make saliva for like a day and a half, and then summiting on the fourth night, and I found a snow patch. It's what saved my life. I found, the top was 7,000 feet plus.
Yeah.
And there was a snow patch, and it saved me. But that one was grueling. Grueling. But I remember we were halfway up it when you guys had to leave.
Oh.
And we were up on that ledge in the morning, and remember, we could just talk like this, and I could hear you like 1,800 feet up. I was on top of that pinnacle in the middle of the wall.
Yeah.
Talking back and forth.
Oh yeah, and I remember that coming down was really tricky, maybe because you were so depleted from the experience. I remember getting down was not easy once you had summited.
No, it wasn't easy at all. We followed the guidebook, and it led us astray. And it didn't lead us astray. It led us astray twice, where we like descended into these gullies off the top of that mountain. And then the gullies themselves, after we lost 1,200 feet of elevation, just ramped off into space and big open wall cliffs.
Whoops.
Climb out of that one, go into the next one, go down. And this is with all our gear and everything. It just, it was driven absolutely to exhaustion.
Hey, I want to shift gears. I want to go back to like junior high or something, and skateboarding. We did a lot of skateboarding. We invented the handstand. One of us, it seems like somebody had one of those aluminum boards, and what were they called? They were called like bonsai. Yeah. And we invented running down the street and throwing down the board and going into a handstand.
Whoever invented that, it was all the same kind of time. But the truth is we figured out how to do it all by ourselves. That's for sure. Did you know that on my 55th birthday, I threw a handstand and went down the street on a skateboard and posted it on Facebook?
Nice. Wow. I'll have to do that, because I sort of feel like I invented that. I kind of remember the whole thing of running and throwing it down. And maybe I made that up, but I feel like I did invent that. But
I remember it was you and I don't remember the circumstances around it. So I'm giving that one to you, Dave.
Okay, I'll take it. So skateboarding, I remember we went to a skate park in Sacramento. It was indoors and it had these huge bowls. Now that we're talking, this is like 1976, 1977, early skateboarding. And we would go skateboarding in this, it was inside this huge building. And it was awesome because it was like painted concrete. So it was extra smooth. And yeah, man.
It was called Skateboard Palace in Sacramento, California, and a
Yeah.
number came out of that. It was that because it was all indoor cement, they painted the floor with that kind of urethane that you put on garage floors, you know?
Yeah.
And so the surface had the slipperiness to it. And so that was the first place where people started sliding down on their knees. You know how nowadays they go super high, and if they bail, they slide down on their knees?
Yeah.
Where that all happened because of that slippery surface, but they were also able to just slide a long way. But yeah, that was great. An indoor skate park.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you do in junior high? How was that for you?
Junior high for me was kind of the beginnings of challenging years. You know, I didn't do so good in grades and there was a lot of pressure on me. Always. And basically in junior high, you know, I moved briefly to Fresno, California for a brief time. And then went to move north to Rockland, California, and went to school. So I ended my junior high up in Rockland. But, you know, those weren't great times for me, except for the skateboarding, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I think about that pressure, putting pressure on kids to get good grades. It'd be nice if kids were given the option of like trade school or like making everyone jump through the same math hoop and the same English hoop and the, you know, like this lockstep, I think is a problem. And how was high school? Did high school, was that better?
Well, in the winter, I was already ski patrolling. You know, at 15, I joined the Junior National Ski Patrol. So for me, what that meant is I had a ski pass.
Yeah.
And they would feed me if I worked a shift. So about 50 minutes from my high school was the ski hill that I worked at, Boreal at the time. And I would take the bus to school. Then I would walk out to the freeway. I would hitchhike.
Like at first period?
And then I would get in my locker, I'd get my skis out, my ski patrol outfit, and then get a meal ticket. And so I would, you know, I spent a lot of time skiing during the high school years and cutting class, and, you know, grades just weren't important to me, but it also made me get grounded a whole bunch. So, but yeah, I wasn't my thing, you know?
Yeah, you know, I interviewed a 20-year-old boy named Zephyr, and he had a hard time his first 2 years in high school because he was trying to conform and trying to get the grades, and it was killing him. And then in his junior year, he decided to hit the mountains and camp and hike with his buddies, and his grades suffered, but his health soared. And it sounds like a sort of a universal story for some people. And it just seems ridiculous to hold everyone to the same state mandated standard, right? Like some people excel at school and they juggle all the pressures, and they do good in piano lessons, and they do good in the sports, and they do good in math, and somehow maybe they're pleasers, but or maybe they just can do it. And then there's people like you and Zephyr that like are not made to sit in a classroom and be quiet and jump through the hoops. And so I give you credit for knowing what you need to do to take care of yourself was walk out to the freeway and stick your thumb out and go to a place that spoke to you, like follow your heart, right? Like the whole society, it seems like at times, is saying, now go into that school and sit in that room and take your poison, you know? And for you to be able to stand up to that as a little individual and say, no, I'm hitchhiking to the ski park, you know, that's a struggle. And to me, it's a great victory of self-preservation, that you made your butt up to Boreal and got up there with your people in your element where you were supposed to be, you know. I like that.
True. And, you know, I went back to school at 27 and ended up, you know, going through junior college and then getting into UC Davis and studying chemistry. And so, like, it's almost like there can be a place for that in your world, but it has to come at the right time for you, you know, because during that time when I went back to college, I excelled. It was right for me. I felt it was right for me. What was damaging for me earlier was not having it be the right time and having all those expectations. You know, the truth is, you know, over the course of my time through teaching whitewater schools and bringing a lot of people into television production as well, and training and teaching a bunch of people, what I've really learned is that people need to, they need to find themselves in the same way that I did, which is, you know, sooner or later, you need to know who you are and what you really can do. And it's always more than you thought you could, you know, and once people have that in their life and they have an understanding, they're operating from a different basis. And so that's what I've always tried to do, teaching people, is get them to really essentially push them to a point where all of a sudden they realize how much they can really do, or how they can get the best out of themselves. And in doing that has always seemed to be very beneficial for their mental health, for their self, you know, worth, their knowledge, everything about that. It's hard to be depressed when you just slammed something and did something major and that was beyond what you ever thought you could do of yourself. Yeah. You know, those feelings opposite of depression. Those feelings, you know, throw anything in front of me, I'll rip it apart right now. And so for me, it was, in my younger life, it was really all about coming to that point where I knew I was just as viable as anybody and I could do the things I wanted to do. If I got to pick those things I got to do, which of course is the selfish part, but I did good. It led me where I needed to go.
Well, I don't think that following your heart and following your passion is necessarily selfish. You know, I mean, it could be, but I'm getting, you know, knowing your dad really well and loving him as much as I do, that he was pretty rigid, or he held a pretty solid line about, you know, what he expected, I'm guessing. And it wasn't easy to you know, feel good about yourself when you know that you're not doing what you're supposed to do and you're going to get in trouble, but still being able to know that you're doing the right thing for Doug Stanley, you know? Yeah,
you know, it's hard to say what would have made me happiest, you know, because the truth is that, you know, I did feel bad through those times about myself, you know, and that I should be doing what was expected of me, you know, and I know that my dad placed those things upon me, but, you know, I'm doing that to my own kids too. I have expectations, you know, I can't just, it's just an interesting balance, having been who I've been and then trying to, you know, get the same thing my dad did out of my sons, you know.
Yeah, telling your son not to hitchhike up to the ski park, you know, that he'll be better off sitting in class.
No, but there are lines that you still draw. You cannot let, you know, I've got a 13-year-old and just turned 16-year-old, or 16 today, right? 16 years old today, my son. Yeah. Correct. And so, you know, just watching them do what they do and what they, you know, what you want to see. And, you know, partly for me on that is trying to make them understand they're part of a community and that they have to contribute. You know, it's one thing to say you have all the freedoms in the whole world, and then, by the way, here, let me just feed you all day and clean for you and do everything for you and just keep, you know. That's where I'm trying to gain ground, is like become responsible for yourself so that, you know, ultimately everybody feels good about you and loves having you around, and that'll help with your self-esteem and it's nothing but good to figure out your place in the community and what you need to contribute, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Like, we've gotten to a point where, like going to school and playing sports is not enough. Like, I have this Brett Weinstein and Heather Haying, these evolutionary biologists who I follow and their podcasts, and I've read their book, and they're just like, that's not enough. It's not enough to go to class and play sports. You got to contribute to the family. I mean, the family unit has been degraded over time to where it's just like a support system for this education system. And it's really important that I feel like that the children actually help with the needs of the family. I mean, like, the kids used to help grow the food and build the house and all of that. And there was a lot of self-worth. A lot of your self-image had something to do with the fact that knowing that you just did something that helped your family. And a kid who only goes to school and plays sports, they never have that experience is gone. It's not there. I mean, okay, you take out the garbage. All right. So for 30 seconds, you're doing something for the family, but it's a lot deeper. And I think that the Amish, maybe they have their problems, but boy, they come together and build houses for each other. They do a lot of meaningful work to help sustain their family and their community. So I don't know what that has to do with the outdoors, but it's hard to build a house indoors, I think, unless it's a modular house that's being shipped out.
Well, have you thought about becoming Amish, David?
I've thought about it. Doesn't your mom have to be Amish in order to become Amish? Isn't that how, or you can just join?
Is that a chicken and the egg problem? At first, the mom Amish or the son Amish?
I don't know. I once had dinner with a Quaker dude, and I think the Quaker women wear paper hats, and they get to drive cars and look at TV sets, but they still maybe build their own houses and stuff. And man, I was hitchhiking around the US, and I ran into these guys at a rest area in Oregon, and it was so cool. They had like 12 different things on this table. It was just this man and wife, and they had this huge spread of food. And I was this hitchhiker, backpacker guy, and I'm like, dang, I should have dinner with those guys, lunch with those guys. And next thing I knew, they invited me over. And man, I had potato salad, coleslaw, chicken, green beans, just feasted with these guys. They were very sweet. And after we ate, the man, who I didn't know, but he was a preacher, he wiped his mouth and he's like, after I eat, I like to give a little sermon, and it was awesome. He gave this sermon about like brotherly love and stuff. And I was like, I'm cool with all this, especially that tapioca custard dessert. But yeah, these are funny times, man. We were not, when we were kids, it was Pong, like they had just started figuring out how to destroy the minds of children with video games. And we played Pong a little bit, but that didn't keep us from climbing to the top of the tree and, skateboarding in the swimming pools in the back of abandoned houses. And I don't know if that was Rockland or if that was Fresno.
I was Fresno.
That's when I got my first Kershaw knife, I remember, with a rosewood handle. And we were out cruising around and we skateboarded in that swimming pool in that abandoned house. That was great. So when I see kids out on the street, it really warms my heart. COVID saw the streets empty. Somehow everybody got the message that the outdoor world was dangerous, which was backwards. The message should have been, go outside, don't sit in rooms. Buildings are really bad for the spread of the virus. But they told everyone to go to their rooms, which was nuts. And so it was so good as we eased up our stranglehold from COVID. I started seeing kids in the parks and playing back. they took the friggin' nets off the basketball hoops, or they took the hoop off so they wouldn't play. And so it was so nice to see everybody back shooting hoops. And yesterday I saw 3 kids skateboarding down the street, and I'm Zoom calling. I mean, I'm FaceTiming my mom. She's like, "They're not in the street, are they? I hope they're okay." And I'm like, don't get worried about these guys. Anyway, it's good to see them out, kids outside, but silence is deadly. Isn't there an old deadly, silent but deadly? That's something else. But being in a neighborhood where, like this neighborhood, I live in a retired white community called Jacksonville right now. And it's scary how quiet it is outside. Oh my gosh. Is that the whole world?
That's it, buddy.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, these are funny times. You know, you've got a 13 and a 16-year-old. I got an 18 and a 20-year-old. And all in all, I would say my kids are doing well. I wish they didn't look at their phone as much as they do, although I'm looking at my phone right now. So it's kind of got everybody. But we're using technology to ask people to use their technology a little bit less. And
it's true. We're
yeah,
using technology to ask people to use it less.
Yes. And you know, I spent 3 weeks in the bottom of the Grand Canyon with you, and on a private trip. We were naked half the time, you know, body paints. It was very, very wild. And it was half of us were from Ashland and half of us were from Lake Tahoe. And that was one of the highest points of my life, partly because I think I felt the wildest and the freest, and also accepted, right? Like that we were a tribe, and we were together in the bottom of the world, in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And what I noticed was that your senses become stronger. Your ability, your sense of taste and smell, and your hearing and your vision. You just become more in tune with your animal nature, and maybe out of your like rational, overdeveloped brain sort of stuff, and more into your wild nature. And to the point where when we got out and it's very hard for me, it was very hard re-entering civilization. And when that first truck came hurtling past us 3 feet away at 70 miles an hour, it didn't compute to my mammalian primitive brain. It's like, was that 40,000 pounds or more? Like just went 3 feet away from me. But there's something to be said for spending vast pieces of time in wilderness with no technology.
Yeah, for 10 summers down there, you know, I do 12-day trip, come home for 2 days, and go back on the river for 12. And each time that group really becomes a tribe. You know, our passengers, you know, would do 10, maybe even 11 trips in the summer. So we'd go out for 5 months and spend the whole time down there with these individual tribes, watching them develop and create, you know, I could write a whole book about the funny sociology of, you know, tribe formations in Grand Canyon.
Sure.
But you know, what you really see over and over again is how the wilderness does affect people, and how it helps recenter them. You know, we've had classic examples like neurosurgeons down there who were so used to controlling everything around them and everybody. And then they come in Grand Canyon and they get me for their trip leader.
Okay.
And it's like coming up against a 6 foot thick concrete steel reinforced wall, because I'm here to enjoy myself. And you know, so every day the first days they'd go, okay, where are we camping tonight? And I'd go, yeah, we'll find a camp on down the river there somewhere. You know, well, how many hours? Well, I don't know, sometime between like 3 o'clock and probably about 8 o'clock. Now, you know, these
Right.
guys But in the end, the stories they would tell me about coming up against these things in them from themselves, coming from that regimented life in a world which had so many patterns and so much linearity, to all of a sudden having to confront the lack of it in Grand Canyon. And some of my best experiences were with people that were going through the process of confronting it. Because when they finally let it go, that neurosurgeon in specific, he finally let it go. We spent the last night on the beach, the 11th day on the beach, and he started crying up a bit and said that, you know, he just didn't want to go. You know, he didn't want to go back.
Oh man.
Same thing happened. The executive dean of Harvard Med School went down the river with me, and he didn't reveal who he was until this 11th night when he was teared up, telling me he didn't want to go back and he just wanted to stay and be my first mate in my raft in Grand Canyon. His name was Dave, and I'll never forget that guy. To see people go through that reorientation and recentering, and then later on to get a letter from him that says something like, "Hey man, since I've been back, I cannot even begin to describe how much that river trip affected my life and who I am and how I'm changing, my priorities have changed, etc." It was like literally like a recharge, like a reminder of who we all are. You know, when families cross 2,000 miles from Honduras or whatever, and they walk north and they, you know, come up to our southern border, you cannot weigh those people on the scale that we're weighing somebody who just sat there and ate bonbons for the last 23 months. You know, they've gone through it, and what you see in their eyes is people who've gone through adventures like that is self-knowledge, you know. And that's super strong and healthy for anybody to come up against something, you know, like that.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. I write in my book about the power of a Grand Canyon trip, or power of taking a trip on the river, even a 2-day trip on the South Fork of the American, or a 1-day can help you shift out of your normal controlled reality. But yeah, that's really good medicine, man. It's really cool that you've had the opportunity to share that. You've done a lot of sharing in your life, you know, you're sharing this thing that you know so well, that you're super comfortable with, and you're standing there, all 220 pounds or whatever on that beach, confidence, knowledge, capability. And these people from the corporate world, they are out of their zone, man. They are so far out of their zone. But, you know, give them credit. They were willing to jump into the fire, right? But they didn't know that there wouldn't be a prompt schedule, and that you wouldn't have the itinerary, like where you're sleeping each night, all printed out, you know, and ready to go.
You know, in my media life, Dave, I often study people on the opposite of that. You know, this project I'm doing right now, for example, is one of a long series of projects I've done, which are basically projects done in the working man genre. You know, I've gone in on top of the crab fishermen in the Bering Sea and created a television show with them at sea. And you know, we've done this with over and over with, you know, mountain rescue people, you know, ship salvagers, you know, the list of shows that I've done that are like this working man genre, which gives me really an opportunity, because I study very deeply our characters, because I need to be able to predict how they're going to react by certain situations, and essentially what makes them interesting to our audience, you know. So in those environments, you know, I've been privy to traveling and being parts of things that normal people don't have access to. You know, I've you know, coming from the media pack at the O.J. Simpson trial when I began, but you know, showing up on sites in southern Chile and the fjords that honeycomb the tip of South America, and coming across, you know, 140 men working on a floating platform in one of those fjords trying to raise a ship. and integrating with their world and studying them because they are my characters, and it's my job to tell their story and their activities. And you get to see a lot of in that world. You get to see a lot of extremism, like people who truly do live on the edge of this earth, like the crab fishermen in Bering Sea. They work harder than anybody, and believe me, I've seen oil people. I've worked with people on oil rigs. I've worked with people at sea in various different places, and so many different jobs with those crab fishermen. They are on the extreme of working. They literally work harder than anybody I know, constantly, and the ground they're standing on is constantly moving at the same time, place. But in our current project, my girlfriend Charlene and I are producing currently a pilot for a new series, which is hoping to become a series. It's called North Point, and it is about the men and women that have chosen to uproot their lives to move to a small town in Portugal, Nazaré, Portugal, where they are all, this group of international people are all facing their own personal challenges, surfing literally the biggest waves in the world, which are almost twice as big as any other wave. And so we've been going back and forth to Portugal. We're headed out for Portugal soon. But in these places, Dave, I get this opportunity where suddenly I am right in the middle of this group. And I've got cameras and we're asking questions. And it is literally like studying how the group works, how it's the interior sociology in real time and nonfiction programming, which is what we do. And over the course, we'll shoot nearly 100 times what we actually use, but we watch people go through their highs and their lows, and we watch them in their best and their worst. And we see people get knocked down and rise back to become heroes. And it's all this microscope study. And then we watch it all at 30 frames a second. We watch the tiniest emotional cues go across their face and edit as we live with them for months and months in edit bays.
Yeah.
And it's really, what I do really is I study people in the extremes, of this world. And what I see is that value to them. I've seen so many times, people, they don't have any other place in this world except coming up against challenges like that. That's what they were born to do. And then there's just been so much goodness. Anybody that's coming up against these challenges you talk about, it seems to be very beneficial to their soul, to their mental health, to the way they perceive themselves, and it's a terrible thing to lose when those people have that too, But that's been my particular joy in life, is really getting to know all these people that do the extremes of the extremes.
So tell me this. How can people follow what you're doing? How can people find out about your Portugal surfing project you got going on?
Well, that particular one, our intention is to make a film that plays film festival circuits, but also
nice
the pilot for the series. So when we finally release that, which will probably be maybe 10 months from today or something in that neighborhood.
Cool.
Then that may be out as North Point, but past that point,
So do you,
on streaming services, I currently have, maybe 130 hours on current streaming. So clearly Deadliest Catch is on Discovery Go. It's almost 100 hours of my life there. And then there's Last American Cowboy is on streaming right now. American MC, Motorcycle Club, American MC is on, a streaming service as well. So there's a bunch of different series out there. Lobster Wars is also on. So it's kind of fun. Those are worthy experiences of my life. Those people, those things.
All right, cool. Well, so when I go viral, is there any other contact you want to share to I don't know. I guess that's it. They can just check out your shows you've done, huh?
Yeah, just I don't really have a website up right now. Otherwise, I'd say go to www.
You don't want to throw your phone number out there?
Here we go. call. What's your number, David?
No. Hey, Doug, I think we got a wrap, buddy. I think that was a great run. I think we did good. I mean, you know, it's been 54.9 years so far, and I think we encapsulated it pretty sweetly in 1 hour.
Yeah, and you know, I did turn 60 yesterday, right?
Oh, of course. Your card go look in your card should be in your mailbox.
All right. See you, buddy. I love you, man. See ya.
All right. Love you. Thanks for sharing.